Welcome back to The Explainer. Look, if you're anything like me, you've probably spent hours foam rolling, stretching, or massaging a stubborn muscle that just refuses to loosen up. We tend to view our bodies like mechanical machines, right? Like if a muscle feels tight, we just assume it's physically shortened, like a tight rubber band, and it just needs to be pulled longer. But here is the crazy part. What if I told you that your entire approach to body pain and tightness might be based on a massive mechanical illusion? Today, we're setting the stage for a profound neurological paradigm shift. We're going to pop the hood on your nervous system to discover what is absolutely, literally happening when you feel tight.
So let's dive right into this question because it's going to totally disrupt your expectations. Why would a muscle feel tight if it isn't mechanically short? Well, because what you perceive as physical shortness is often just your brain's alarm system going off. You see, your central nervous system is constantly monitoring your body, and when it senses a threat, say a lack of blood flow or metabolic stress in a specific area from sitting at your desk way too long, it sounds an alarm, and that alarm is the sensation of tightness. It's not a factual description of the muscle's physical length, it's just a neurological prompt practically begging you to move.
I absolutely love this quote we pulled from the Physio Network. Tightness is a feeling, not just a mechanical condition. Just like pain is a feeling that doesn't always equal actual tissue damage, tightness is really a protective perceptual construct. It's your brain interpreting signals and deciding, okay, something needs to change right now. Tension itself isn't the threat. Muscles are literally designed to create tension. The real threat is the constant frequency of that tension or the lack of blood flow. Your brain creates the feeling of tightness to warn you, essentially yelling, hey, things are getting super stagnant on here, change your posture.
Let's move right into Section 1, the illusion of tightness, perception versus reality. Now, if you've been chasing symptoms for years without getting results, this right here is why. The feeling of tension is not an actual mechanical limitation. Have you ever noticed that your hamstrings might feel incredibly tight, but then you bend over and you can touch your toes with a full, perfect range of motion? Or, on the flip side, someone else might not feel tight at all but can barely reach past their knees. This brilliantly illustrates that the feeling of tension is an alarm prompting you to fix an underlying issue. You can't just stretch away a fire alarm, right? You have to figure out why the alarm is sounding in the first place.
That brings us to Section 2, sensory motor amnesia and subconscious adaptation.
Think of your central nervous system as this invisible puppeteer. Your brain is just incredibly efficient. When you repeat a specific posture over and over, like slouching over your laptop all day, your nervous system takes notes. To save energy, it completely automates this posture. It subconsciously pulls the strings to keep those specific muscles partially contracted all the time, just so you don't have to consciously think about holding yourself up. The invisible puppeteer completely takes over for the sake of efficiency.
But as you can probably guess, there's a heavy cost to this efficiency, and it's something Thomas Hanna called sensory motor amnesia. When slouching becomes automated, your brain essentially keeps those muscles flipped on constantly. Over time, your sensory receptors adapt to this new normal. You actually lose the sensation of that constant contraction, and, get this, you lose the ability to voluntarily relax those muscles. Unnatural, damaging positions begin to feel completely normal to you, and ironically, sitting up straight suddenly feels incredibly uncomfortable and effortful. You haven't just formed a bad habit, your nervous system has actually developed amnesia.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the compensation cycle, adapting to imbalance. When your body tries to compensate for this amnesia, this whole cascade of physical errors kicks off. To understand this, we need to contrast passive shortening with active contracting. Imagine your body is a suspension bridge. The cables on the front and back absolutely must maintain equal tension to keep the whole structure upright. When you sit all day, the muscles on the front of your body, like your chest and hip flexors, are put into a shortened position. But they aren't working hard. They are just resting in a passively shortened state. Because the front cables of our suspension bridge are suddenly shorter, your body naturally wants to collapse forward. So the muscles on the back of your body have to actively contract and work crazy overtime just to keep you upright. This dynamic details exactly why you feel so much pain in your upper and lower back. It is almost never because those back muscles are mechanically short. Actually, scratch that. It's because they are exhausted. They are actively contracting and fatiguing from working double shifts to compensate for the shortened, lazy muscles on the front of your body. When you complain about a tight back, you are really complaining about an overworked back. Stretching it out might give you temporary relief, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to address the passively shortened front muscles that are pulling your whole system out of alignment.
Which leads perfectly into Section 4, reflex inhibition and muscle imbalances. Look at how Dr. Vladimir Janda maps this out with his upper and lower crossed syndromes. Notice the crisscross patterns here on the visual. You basically have an axis of facilitated tight muscles crossing an axis of inhibited weak muscles. For example, a tight chest paired with a tight upper neck creates those classic rounded shoulders of upper crossed syndrome. The crucial takeaway for us is that these aren't just random, isolated issues. They're very specific pairs of inhibited and facilitated muscles that systematically wreck your joint alignment.
And the invisible mechanism keeping you trapped in this crossed syndrome? It's called reflex inhibition. When a postural muscle, like your hip flexor, becomes neurologically shortened, it automatically sends an inhibitory signal to its opposing muscle, the glute. And this is the frustrating reality of it all. You literally cannot just strengthen weak muscles with endless squats or glute bridges as long as the opposing muscles remain neurologically tight. Your nervous system simply will not allow the weak muscle to fire at full capacity. It's like trying to drive with the parking brake on. You have to take your foot off the brake before you hit the gas.
Up next is Section 5, Movement Efficiency and System Breakdown.
Because when your system gets this out of balance, your movement efficiency just tanks. If a primary mover muscle fails to do its job, because of that reflex inhibition we just talked about, your nervous system doesn't just throw its hands up and quit. It recruits synergist or helper muscles to get the job done. This essentially replaces optimal motor programs with completely suboptimal ones. It skyrockets your energy costs. You lose the ability to dissociate joints, meaning you start moving your lower back every time you just try to move your hip. Eventually, instead of healthy joint stability, your body develops this awful rigidity, limiting how you can move and heavily increasing your risk of injury.
And here is the really crucial point to remember. Your central nervous system is essentially blind. It has no idea what a bicep or a hamstring actually is. It only understands signals, and it will happily learn, memorize, and reinforce maladaptive compensatory movement patterns if we don't consciously step in and stop it. If you go to the gym and throw heavy weights onto a dysfunctional movement pattern, you definitely aren't fixing the problem. You are literally just baking the bad code deeper into your nervous system.
So let's talk about the fix. Section 6, Movement Optimization, Fixing the Code.
How do we actually rewrite that bad code? Notice how the mobilization continuum transitions so smoothly from passive relief on the left side, like using a foam roller or getting a massage, all the way over to active reprogramming on the right. Those passive strategies are great for temporary relief, for sure, but to make the changes actually stick in your nervous system, you have to move across this continuum toward active, highly deliberate movement. And here is the step-by-step game plan to do exactly that. Step 1, mobilize. You first have to create space by reducing tension and down-regulating those overactive, tight muscles. Step 2, activate. Once you have that new space, you create awareness. You use low-threshold, highly focused exercises to build up the mind-muscle connection and upregulate the inhibited, weak muscles. And finally, step 3, integrate. You create behavior. You take that newly acquired mobility and awareness and you integrate it into complex, loaded movements, like a beautifully executed squat or deadlift. And this right here is why all of this matters to you. The ultimate goal isn't to force you to overthink every single step you take for the rest of your life. By consciously moving through that mobilization continuum, you are actively overriding those old, faulty motor programs. If you emphasize proper, conscious movement right now, eventually it will move right back down to the level of automaticity. You are retraining your invisible puppeteer to pull the right strings effortlessly, making optimal, pain-free movement your brand new subconscious default. Which leaves us with this final, real game changer of a question. The very next time you feel a tight muscle and you instinctively reach for the foam roller, I want you to ask yourself, are you just treating the symptom, or are you actually reprogramming the system? Stop fighting your body's mechanical alarms and start strategically retraining your nervous system. Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer. Keep learning, keep optimizing, and we will catch you next time.